All right. Let's get into a quick little segment on national picture here. This was an interesting weekend. Week one, for the first time in a while, and maybe it's because we actually have real football back and everything else, but it felt super exciting. And we got some matchups that I think really just, it opened our eyes. I think this was a very educational weekend in football. You had Clemson and Georgia facing off in talk about a heavyweight, old school dogfight. Not an offensive touchdown scored in that game. You've got Notre Dame playing a Florida State in a very emotional game for the Seminoles, honoring Bobby Bowden. Mackenzie Milton gets in the game. It's just everything kind of ebbing and flowing for them, and just the beautiful things that you love about college football. You had Oklahoma, who got into a little bit of a tussle with the team in Tulsa, who was, it's, what are we looking at? This is a game that we're not supposed to have. You had Alabama beating the piss out of Miami. What'd you take away from the national scene in college football this week?
Yeah, I said this on our After Dark show. Those matchups are good for college football early. I think that was something that was a staple in in college football in years past. Just talking to my dad, even in the late 80s, early 90s, like those matchups were regular. Like you had the Penn State Notre Dames, the, powerhouse versus powerhouse in week 1, week 2, week 3. And then they kind of got away from that and they went to how can we service the smaller schools? And it's a way for us to create funding for them. And then we also get, some easy wins on our schedule and get some momentum going forward. And I think now you're starting to see, especially with the pressure for the college football playoff, and strength of schedule and all that stuff, you're starting to see these matchups show back up. I think it's good for college football. And I think it's going to be massive for college football moving forward to handle some of these issues and hash out some of these issues, especially across conferences when it comes to playoff positions and all that stuff. So big picture, that's my first thought. But I think the one thing that you pointed out is that this allows you to get a feel for who is for real and who is not. And it brings out the frauds very early, and it shows the guys who are for real. And I think you said it. I mean, I think Georgia and Alabama made a statement when you talk about that top 5, and that could be a massive clash of the Titans in the SEC championship game. And I think we also learned a lot about Notre Dame. I think Clemson, because of the quality of that game, I think offensively they have some things they have to figure out.
Yeah, they got a couple issues on offense, I think.
But I think defensively, you sit there and you being a defensive guy, and me respecting the old school ways of football and the football gods. If you can play defense that well, you're going to be able to play. You're going to be in every game that you step on the field with whomever you step on the field with. So
I think defensively, there's a couple of spots where they lack explosive athletes, but they play extremely well as a unit, if that makes sense. And I agree. Like Notre Dame was the interesting one for me. I thought Jack Coan looked really good, but I tweeted this, like people were getting on Marcus Freeman late in the game because of some of the alignments that he was using defensively, 3 defensive linemen down, and Florida State was running the ball down their throat. And I'm like, wait a minute, like Freeman's an Ohio State guy, so of course I'm going to be out there on Twitter caping for Freeman. But I'm like, guys, wait a minute, like you can talk bad about the defense, and I'm not saying that he's right because he was wrong, but their offense fell asleep in the third quarter too. 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Everybody on that squad clocked out and gave Florida State a chance to make that game more interesting than it needed to be. The great teams, in my opinion, they don't necessarily do things like that.
They put the gas to the floor and they stomp on it and finish it.
Yeah, they close teams out.
It's funny. I'm texting my dad during that game, and me and my dad always go back and forth, and he always seems to somehow get a little punch in. But right before Notre Dame went on that run where they did stretch it to 18, I told him, I said, I think Notre Dame separates in the first 10 minutes of the third quarter here. And of course they do. And I get so excited. I text my dad. I'm like, I told you, man, I got a crystal ball or something down here. I'm telling you. And he's, yeah. And then, of course, throwing the Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend text right back in my face as soon as it becomes a ball game.
Yep.
So, yeah. I think Coan that was eye-opening for me.
Well, it's what he can do when he has upgraded athletes to get the ball to, and an upgraded offensive line, which is wild to say, but Notre Dame, for any school outside of Wisconsin, is known for having first round guys on their offensive line and some explosive running backs. Like the guys around him literally elevated him, and he was in the right situation to do it. You would know this just from quarterbacking, because he's a guy who doesn't make a ton of mistakes. Like, he's going to take a sack instead of throwing a dumb pass. And, like he's going to take the underneath guy when that guy's open instead of trying to force it down the field. Yep. And so I think he was in a perfect situation to level up his play.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting because Notre Dame and their schedule moving forward, I think on the back half, both their safeties, I think, are spectacular players.
Yeah, they are. Oh my God.
They're insane. So I think they have the people in place. I think it'll just be interesting. And the one thing you pointed out was just the environment, the atmosphere, the momentum, that college football magic that you don't really get in the league showed up that night, playing down there, night game, the crowd was in it. Those things are all factors, and those guys haven't seen that, in quite a long time. So, I think Brian Kelly obviously wasn't too pleased, but we'll
move off of those comments there. I don't know if that was necessarily what he needed to say, but
no, but I think ultimately it's a good win. I think it's a good, tough win for them.
Agreed.
And we'll see what the rest of the season, has in store.